Detroit is a city in the state of Michigan, located in the Midwest. It is currently home to 677,000 people. It's located in the Rust Belt in the Midwest. Detroit wasn't always this way. It was actually once a booming metropolis. Back in the 50s, Detroit was home to 1.8 million people, the fourth largest city in the United States of America at the time. But once the 50s passed and the good times were gone, it all went downhill from there, like many other Rust Belt cities. Detroit obviously has to be known as the worst, even though places like Cleveland, Chicago, Toledo, Buffalo are close seconds. But the thing about Detroit is, how did something so big, so rich and prosperous turn into what it is in 2016? Detroit's just known for being dangerous, corrupt, poor, no jobs for anyone, and it's been shrinking since the 50s. Which, once it hit its peak, it all went downhill from there. So, the way it got this way, well, back in the 50s, it was known as it still is probably, I guess you could still call it the automotive capital of the world, due to it being home to General Motors, Chrysler, and Ford. All these companies kept Detroit alive and well. But when the auto industry collapsed, Detroit's jobs just all went. And so there were no jobs. And so everyone left. And then people who couldn't leave stayed. And then it got so bad that now they're all leaving. So when all the people with money left, there was no economy, because there was no taxpayers, because no one had money. Now Detroit, many people look at it as failed city, failed metropolis, just nothing. People look at it as just a failure. But other people, including myself, look at it as an opportunity to recreate the capitalistic disaster Detroit is. To recreate an entire metropolis in our eyes. Because there's still people there. People don't realize that it's home. The metropolitan area of Detroit is home to 4 million plus people, and it's still growing. Even though the city limits to Detroit is only home to 677,000 people. But the shrinking has stopped in Detroit because it's known that downtown area, midtown, uptown, Corktown, just all the area around downtown has been recreated. And that's what we need to turn America, because Detroit is what America could end up like. The rest of America, New York City, Boston, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Phoenix, all these major metropolises could look like Detroit. So, how about we change what people think America might look like? Because there are people saying that Detroit is what America is going to look like. And how about we change up Detroit to become the great metropolis it once was? Now let me explain. First, the number one thing you gotta do for Detroit is attract people. But to attract people, you need jobs. Now, here's what I think we need to do. There are people still in Detroit that have money. There are people that want to invest in Detroit because they know that it is it can be a great city. Now, what people in Detroit should do, if I personally, me, was mayor of Detroit, I would immediately lower taxes on businesses. Because this lowered taxes on businesses would help people out so much when they try to start a business. And businesses create jobs. And when people have jobs, they aren't out killing, for example, because if you have a job, why would you go out killing? So that lowers the crime rate, and the more jobs attract more people. So the more people that come, that means more taxpayer dollars go to the government. So the city has more money, to invest in stuff like a better police force, better hospitals, and one of the best things Detroit is known about is its horrible school system. And it's estimated that you gotta invest $715 million to fix Detroit's school system. So if you take the taxpayer money, invest it in this stuff, basically recreate the insides of the city, the government, and all of that, with all that money, public services, all this stuff, that lets Detroit basically become brand new. Although you still have the problem with empty houses because there's still not going to be enough people there. But another thing with these empty houses comes potential, and that's what I'm talking about next, is infrastructure and buildings in general. Now Detroit has a lot of old factories, old houses, all these things that are just standing here, old skyscrapers that are literally abandoned, literally skyscrapers, like tall buildings that are abandoned that can literally be recreated and used for different stuff. So you don't need to destroy these buildings. You need to rebuild them, renovate them, turn them into apartment complexes, workspaces, and all this stuff is where businesses can go and people can live and prosper. And so to do this, to rebuild this stuff, you need people. And so these jobs, so people will have jobs. And another thing about people is the city needs to lower the taxes on the people. Because the lower tax, will attract more people. Because if you look at the pattern right now, people are leaving high tax places such as New York, Massachusetts, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, basically places in the Northeast and Midwest like Illinois. I'm not going to leave the Midwest out of it, but mainly the Northeast, because everyone's moving to cheaper places with lower taxes and lower rent and just lower costs of living, like Texas, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia. All these places are affordable to live in. So why would you want to stay in a place that's so expensive when you can go to an equally as great place for cheap? So that's where it comes in with Detroit. Because if Detroit's more affordable, that'll attract more people. So lower taxes on people makes the cost of living in general just cheaper. So the more people that live in Detroit, well, people will be attracted to live in Detroit. So that means more people live in Detroit, more tax dollars go to the city. That means the city has more money to invest in stuff. And now let's get the more jobs, because infrastructure in Detroit is horrible. Roads, basically just roads, because their road system's horrible because it's all crumbling. So if you invest money in infrastructure, build new things, invest more money into I think it's called the Detroit People Mover. It's the big basically sky train. Chicago has one. It's famous. Yeah, looking at it right now. That, if you invest money in that, more poor people will take public transportation. That means more and more people are investing money into the city, because people are paying the city to go on their public transportation. Now, this means the city has more money, and also means less car emissions. So, Detroit has money now, the city, and let's talk about next is the open land, because Detroit is known of having just open fields for miles, because all these old neighborhoods were torn down. And what you can do, what the city can do, is build. The city can basically be a leader in the world. What the city has to do is invest money in renewable energy. So this renewable energy, such as solar panels and windmills, put them out in these open fields and concentrate the entire population in the downtown waterfront, or the riverfront, area of the city. So when you concentrate everyone around the downtown area, That means all the outer parts of the city, more towards the suburbs, all these empty fields can be used for solar panels, windmills, all this area for renewable energy, all going towards where all the people will be centered in the downtown area. So now all these people are in the downtown area, so you have all the space. The next thing I'm going to talk about is a little controversial because not many people agree with me, but the legalization of marijuana. Now, personally, I believe that the legalization of marijuana is a great thing for states, countries, and cities because this legalization creates money. And this money can be used by the state, the city, just the governments in general of places. And Detroit is great for urban weed farming because of the space. Because Detroit has something that many other cities don't. Space. Now, with this urban farming will become a new breed of economy for cities. And now we have these windmill solar panels, and we can have weed farms. These weed farms will basically give money, create jobs, because people have jobs so they get to grow their own weed, support the local economy of the city, and, well, the city will have more money. So, it's really a win-win situation when it comes to marijuana. Because people have, well, money now, and the city has money. And the last thing I want to talk about is a very big thing that Detroit is really well known for. And it's corruption in politics. And basically, it's just corruption inside its government. Now, the government of Detroit is infamous for being, well, corrupt. So basically, what I think needs to happen is we need someone who's not corrupt to go in and basically wipe out all the corrupt people, change up the entire politics in Detroit, and basically make it a way better place for politics. Because with better politics comes a better city. Because you got people who you can trust, and people who didn't go to jail for drug crimes. The last mayor. But yeah, you have people you can trust in your city, people that will treat the city so good. It can peak again. It can beat its peak. And I'm telling you, Detroit will become a beautiful city again. That's it all. That's all I have to say. Goodbye.